20th of April at 5 p.m, no more than 12 BME women and non-binary people congregated in the ground floor of the Students' Union in a room named after the formidable black activist and revolutionary communist Angela Davis. The nature of the gathering was a political meeting to discuss how we, as BME students, are going to campaign around the issues that have been raised by liberation movements on campus and the most recent occupation. And that is all it was. It was not an anti-racism rally, nor was it an event to celebrate the cultural diversity in the institution, and most definitely not an equality protest, as it was dubbed by the media. The backlash following on from the Scoot original article in the tab was an outrageous distortion of facts, and ironically did the opposite of what this meeting was meant to achieve. The meeting was called for by BME women and non-binary people, which I, as a representative of this community, listened to, fully supported, and facilitated a space for. Minority peoples organising autonomously is not new, and if our right-wing critics put as much time into researching the history of our struggles that they do into smearing us all over social media, then they might have not been so outraged by our intimate meeting. Since the media storm, my position as welfare and diversity officer has been called into question. Both times that I run in student elections for this post, I had won on a manifesto which stated that I represent the most traditionally unrepresented. In an unequal society where power relations in the wider world pervade our institutions, how can one possibly represent the needs of all people when people, by virtue of their gender, race, and class, have opposing interests? I've said it before and I'll say it again. I represent the most marginalised people at Goldsmiths. Furthermore, there have been charges made against me that I am racist and sexist to white men. I want to explain why this is false. I, an ethnic minority woman, cannot be racist or sexist towards white men because racism and sexism describe structures of privilege based on race and gender. And therefore women of colour and minority genders cannot be racist or sexist since we do not stand to benefit from such a system. In order for our actions to have been deemed racist or sexist, the current system would have to be one which enables only people of colour and women to benefit economically and socially on such a large scale, and to the systematic exclusion of white people and men, who for the past 400 years would have had to have been subjected to colonisation. We do not live in such a system. We do not know of such a history. Reverse racism and reverse sexism are not real. Despite the witch hunt and shameful character assassination the right-wing media have been gleefully whipping up, this isn't about me. And despite desperate attempts to humiliate and denigrate a 27-year-old woman of colour from a working-class immigrant family, this isn't about my struggle. I am just one person, and there have been many people before me, and there will be many more after me who will be the targets of racial and gendered abuse. This is only one in a series of attacks upon minority women on campus since the start of the term, which has received national and even international media attention. And if we consider the recent scandals regarding BME people in positions of power in the UK, it cannot be just a coincidence that this story has gained huge coverage alongside the smearing of a black candidate who ran in the NUS National Conference 2015 for a full-time role. These attacks upon people of colour are politically and ideologically driven along racial lines. The thought of people of colour holding positions of power frightens white supremacy, a system built on and sustained through the oppression of BME people, minority genders, and the cheap labour of immigrants. No, this isn't about me. This is about us. This is about our struggle. This is about all minorities. And this is even about every single person in this room. Because in the project for emancipation from all oppressive systems, an injury to one is an injury to all. And when you feign neutrality and watch with lips sealed while a young woman is receiving death threats and comments like, that smug self-righteous look makes me just want to prime and ready the back of my hand, then your silence is violence, and we wear the scars, and appeals to, but we're all just human, and are rendered hollow and vacuous when we consider a history of colonisation based on the ongoing project to dehumanise us. We are simply not just individuals, and oppression doesn't happen in a vacuum. Social relations are encumbered by power, and who holds what power over who is determined by our material conditions. The difference between the way we experience prejudice and the way a white man might be discriminated against is that our discrimination is always marked by the very fact of our gender and our race in relation to a wider system of domination which historically privileges the white male colonizer over us whose bodies are colonized. This consistency serves to remind us that we have no stake in white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. Whereas white supremacy has everything to lose, because white supremacy has everything. Because the entire world is a safe space for the white, powerful men. Because people who benefit from white supremacy will never truly understand what it feels like to be reminded of the trauma of their ancestors' oppression, or the creeping and paralyzing sensation of fear when an abusive boyfriend you're trying to leave won't let you, and you know that 2 women in the UK are killed by their male partners every week. They will never really know what it's like to feel terror at the thought of disclosing to a friend that you were just sexually assaulted, because you know that society likes to paint women and girls as liars, and that if you're a woman of colour, the backlash is tenfold. But this also reminds me that we have everything to gain. Women, LGBTQ+, disabled, and BME people will never apologise for taking back space, especially in the face of a society that directly benefits from our systematic exclusion. To deny the legitimacy of this claim is to commit an act of violence. To appeal to a liberal interpretation of oppression is oppression and must be resisted. When the positions of the most privileged people in society are threatened by us, they do everything they can to cling on desperately to their power. But if the right-wing media and our opponents think they've scared us into silence or distracted us from our struggle, then it is them who should be scared, because we are not going down without a fight. Simply, we are not going down. Women and non-binary people of colour reject any view which suggests that we live in a post-racist, post-sexist society that is uninformed by class relations. We reject this view not only ideologically, but because our lived experiences force us to know the facts of our oppression. We are BME, we are disabled, we are queer, we are angry, and we are organised. We will not be silenced. We are militant. The world is not ready for minorities to challenge the status quo, but resistance to our resistance is futile. And I'll end with one quote from an old Mexican proverb. They tried to bury us, they didn't know we were seeds. Thank you for listening.